You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
What's the common denominator in security incidents? Escalations and lateral movement. When a privileged account is compromised, attackers can seize control of critical assets. With bad directory hygiene and years of technical debt, identity attack paths are easy targets for threat actors to exploit, but hard for defenders to detect. This poses risk in Active Directory, Entra ID, and hybrid configurations. Identity leaders are reducing such risks with attack path management. You can learn how attack path management is connecting identity and security teams while reducing risk with Bloodhound Enterprise, powered by SpecterOps. Head to specterops.io today to learn more. SpecterOps, see your attack paths the way adversaries do.
Today is May 6th, 2025. I'm Maria Varmazis, and this is T-Minus.
T-Minus. 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift. Go for deploy. Roger, roll.
iSpace's Resilience lunar lander slated to enter lunar orbit tomorrow, May 7th.
4.
Rocket Lab has announced its next dedicated mission for IQPS on May 17th.
3.
Rivada Space and Pulsar Solutions to partner on secure connectivity.
2.
D-Orbit has signed a contract with SpaceX for additional launch capacity on upcoming transporter rideshare missions.
1.
Stratolaunch's Talon A2 vehicle successfully completed its second hypersonic flight and recovery last month.
0.
And today's guest is Chuck Cynamon, president of Telesat Government Solutions. I caught up with Chuck at Space Symposium to find out the latest news with light speed, so stick around to find out more later in the show. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is admittedly another quiet day here in the United States as the space industry holds its breath to see what comes next with federal projects. But we still have updates and new partnership announcements to get through in today's intelligence briefing, so let's dive in. We're kicking off with updates out of California. Stratolaunch's Talon A2 vehicle successfully completed its second hypersonic flight and recovery last month. This follows the first hypersonic flight of Talon A2, which was in December 2024, confirming the demonstrated reusability of the vehicle. The vehicle surpassed Mach 5 during its trajectory for the second time, exceeding the previous speed record set with the December flight. And Stratolaunch used Ursa Major's Hadley liquid rocket engine for the hypersonic tests and says these completed flights represent the United States' return to reusable hypersonic flight test, the first since the X-15 program ended in 1968. The company performed the flights for the Test Resource Management Center Multi-Service Advanced Capability Hypersonic Testbed Program, also known as MACH-TB, under a partnership with LIDOS. The MACH-TB program is intended to increase the speed of testing for all commercially available hypersonic platforms. George Rumford, director of the Department of Defense Test Resource Management Center, added to the press release that demonstrating the reuse of fully recoverable hypersonic test vehicles is an important milestone for MACH-TB, and added that lessons learned from this test campaign will help us reduce vehicle turnaround time from months down to weeks. Congratulations to all involved. Moving over to some partnership updates now, starting with Italy's D-Orbit. They've signed a contract with SpaceX for additional launch capacity on upcoming transporter rideshare missions. The agreement gives D-Orbit 16 ports across multiple missions. This new capacity will enable D-Orbit to further scale its offering of launch, last-mile delivery services, and in-orbit demonstration opportunities for third-party payloads. The Italian company already has 4 launches scheduled for 2025, in addition to the new contract. Rivada Space and Pulsar Solutions say that they will partner on secure connectivity for customers in commercial maritime, agritech, enterprise, and government markets. Pulsar plans to use Rivada's outer net to provide resiliency for a range of data connectivity solutions and a new level of cybersecurity for customers that require secure infrastructure in places with limited or no connectivity. Rivada Space Networks is scheduled for initial deployment of their outer net satellite constellation this year, with full deployment anticipated by mid-2028. Rocket Lab has announced its next dedicated mission for Japan's Institute for Kyushu Pioneers of Space, also known as IQPS. The Sea God Seas is Rocket Lab's 3rd mission for IQPS, and the second in a lineup of 8 dedicated missions across 2025 and 2026 to deploy IQPS's constellation. The mission will launch from Rocket Lab Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand during a launch window that opens on May 17th. Rocket Lab will launch a single synthetic aperture radar imaging satellite called QPS SAR-10, nicknamed Waratsumi-1 for the Japanese god of the sea, to a 575-kilometer circular Earth orbit, where the satellite will join the rest of the IQPS constellation in providing high-resolution images and Earth monitoring services globally. And iSpace's Resilience lunar lander is slated to enter lunar orbit tomorrow, May 7th. Resilience, the tenacious micro rover, and customer payloads that they are all carrying began their journey to the moon on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket earlier this year. They flew by the moon once already as part of the low-energy transfer orbit and reached a distance of approximately 1.1 million kilometers from Earth, and are now back from their deep space journey and getting ready for LOI, or lunar orbit insertion. Completion of the first lunar orbit insertion maneuver and confirmation that the lander is in lunar orbit will complete Success 7 of the Mission 2 milestones, and we should have more on that milestone on tomorrow's show. And that wraps up today's Intel Briefing. Our senior producer, Alice Caruth, is keeping an eye on additional stories that didn't make today's top 5. Alice, what have you got for us?
Europe's Quantum Systems, who are a supplier for aerial intelligence solutions, just raised 160 million euros for their unmanned aerial systems. It's a little more space adjacent, but definitely a company we're keeping an eye on.
And where can our listeners read more about that?
We've included the link in our selected reading section of our show notes, and you'll also find them all on our website, space.n2k.com. Just click on today's episode title.
Hey, T-Minus crew, if you are just joining us, be sure to follow T-Minus Space Daily in your favorite podcast app. Also, if you could do us a favor, share the intel with your friends and coworkers. So here's a little challenge for you. By Friday, please show 3 friends or coworkers this podcast. A growing audience is the most important thing for us, and we would love your help as part of the T-Minus crew. If you find T-Minus useful, please share so other professionals like you can find the show. Thank you. It means a lot to me and all of us here at T-Minus.
And now a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud. Identity is the new battleground, and attackers are exploiting stolen identities to infiltrate your organization. Traditional defenses can't keep up. SpyCloud's holistic identity threat protection helps security teams uncover and automatically remediate hidden exposures across your users, from breaches, malware, and phishing to neutralize identity-based threats like account takeover, fraud, and ransomware. Don't let invisible threats compromise your business. Get your free corporate darknet exposure report at spycloud.com/cyberwire and see what attackers already know. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire.
Our guest today is Chuck Cynamon, president of Telesat Government Solutions. I caught up with Chuck at the Space Symposium and asked for the latest news about their Lightspeed constellation.
Lightspeed was specifically built or being built for enterprise, government, and defense users. It's not for the consumer, direct-to-home kind of capability. It's for the telcos, it's for governments, for defense. And one of the most important things that the company has done from the beginning in this design with MDA Space is to build in the cybersecurity and the U.S. government security requirements from the very start. It's not a bolt-on after the fact. And so I think that's very synergistic with a company like Viasat, who's been at the forefront for government networks, military networks based upon secure networks. So I'm very excited because it brings that multi-orbit capability that the DoD, actually all the international partners and even the commercial telcos are looking for, is having that multi-orbit, multi-frequency kind of capability, and I think it's a great partnership.
Well, congratulations on that wonderful news. And yes, so much of what you just said aligns with a lot of where we hear market trends moving towards in terms of the integration from development onwards of security, especially for these sensitive customers, as you mentioned, as well as working within proliferated LEO constellations, makes a lot of sense. It's really it's where things are moving in the right direction. So yeah, it's great to hear that you all are at the forefront of that as well.
Yeah, and the fact that security was built in from the beginning, it kind of broadens the perspective in how our customers can access, potentially even own a piece of a Telesat network.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so, traditionally the GEO constellations, you have people that are kind of leasing bandwidth to run their networks over. One of the innovative ways that Lightspeed is going to offer service is capacity pools, which actually sells pools either by volume or by data rate to customers to allow them to basically own that capacity and operate it for themselves. And, we believe that this is going to have be a needle-moving capability that, again, government and defense, we're already seeing it on the enterprise side. The commercial team, has already done some early sales. You heard about the Orange landing station and capacity by the Space Norway deal. So those things are indicative of, early commitments by the telco side of things.
Orange in France. I'm just, yes,
Orange
it took
France,
me a second.
yes.
Yep, I remember. Okay, yes.
And they're going to have a landing station as well as a capacity pool. Again, even with Viasat, they're going to have access to capability that is going to bolster their aero and maritime and defense markets. But again, for militaries and even international partners, the ability to have something like a capacity pool that now they can share and use as contribution, to a joint operation in the future. We see that as kind of game-changing versus, hey, you're just leasing this particular satellite or bandwidth over the satellite.
It sounds like a paradigm shift, honestly. It makes a lot of sense given the challenges, and not just in the market, but also the opportunities that people are looking for. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about your thoughts about maybe trends in satellite that you're seeing that are going on right now.
Well, I mean, obviously the big trend is the transition from the GEO market to the LEO market. I mean, the big thing that people are looking for is the reduction in latency. From a government and defense, it's all about not only the resiliency, but the security. We know that there are emerging threats and active threats against the GEO constellation or constellations in GEO. I mean, if you think about it, a satellite that's in GEO stays over the same place of the planet 24/7, 365. It gives constant access to a would-be adversary to understand how we use the satellite and to plan to do something nefarious. The thing that other orbits, whether it be the medium Earth orbit and specifically LEO, and even like what Norway's doing, Space Norway with the HEO orbit.
Yep.
That gives a different kind of problem from an adversary to understand who's operating on the satellite, where they're being, where they're communicating from, where the network's going, and where the traffic's going. Again, that's another thing that I think is a differentiator. I'm very excited about within Lightspeed is the idea that we're going to have the optical intersatellite links that would allow, somebody on one side of the planet to have their traffic land wherever they want, or not land
I was going to say, yeah.
in certain places that maybe
Hop
they
over
don't
that
want
entirely,
it.
yes.
But using those links, not sacrificing that much in terms of that latency, still getting their traffic to land where they want. And that entire end-to-end network looks nothing more than like an Ethernet plug in terms of that optical Ethernet standard that Lightspeed is using.
It's fantastic.
So it's very exciting. I think it also offers the opportunity to kind of coalesce around a standard that perhaps allows for interoperability amongst other LEO constellations.
That's another hot topic
even if it
there.
has to be done on the ground.
Yep.
So again, in terms of, what are the emerging trends, the government's been pursuing for a while this thing called, multi-orbit, multi-frequency terminals and networks. That was something that was near and dear to my heart when I was in LA. We were kind of reimagined what does the future of SATCOM look like if you're going to integrate and have hybrid networks between commercial and military. Mm-hmm. What are the standards, that are going to allow for that interoperability? It's
not something you want to figure out later.
Terminals.
Yeah, you got to figure that out up front.
It's a very complex undertaking. And by the way, Lightspeed is a very complex system. And I'm very excited to see how the teams are working together. I just spent a week in Ottawa, with the team, hearing from, all the leadership there, and I'm pretty excited about the progress that's being made.
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all this with me. I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts before we wrap up.
I think, the next 18 to 24 months for Lightspeed and for Telesat are going to be very exciting. We've got our challenges, obviously. This is a very complex system, but again, I know that the team that Lightspeed has put together to deliver the system is going to do a great job.
We'll be right back.
Traditional pen testing is resource-intensive, slow, and expensive, providing only a point-in-time snapshot of your application's security, leaving it vulnerable between development cycles. Automated scanners alone are unreliable in detecting faults within application logic and critical vulnerabilities. Outpost 24's continuous pen testing as a service solution offers year-round protection, with recurring manual penetration testing conducted by CREST-certified pen testers, allowing you to stay ahead of threats and ensure your web applications are always secure.
Welcome back. The more I work on this show, the more I find myself brushing off long dormant crevices of my brain that once knew a thing or two about the basics of nuclear power. Now, nukes have always had a part to play in powering space missions and have for a long time. There are some interesting new developments in the last few years, though, and here's another one. This one comes from Japan, as it is turning to a long-overlooked element to power its future space missions. The Japan Atomic Energy Agency, or JAEA, and JAXA are developing a radioisotope battery based on americium. Now, americium is a synthetic element so named because it was first created during World War II at UC Berkeley and sits under its analogous element, europium, on the periodic table. Little science history for you there. Americium, which is number 95 on the periodic table, is usually considered a nuclear oddball. It's best known for making smoke detectors work. It's a byproduct of plutonium decay and has a half-life of over 400 years and gives off steady heat without the kind of fission that demands heavy shielding. That made it historically less attractive than plutonium-238, which powers NASA's deep space probes, but also made it harder to weaponize. And that is something that might actually work in its favor for peaceful space applications today. So, Japan wants to use americium's consistent heat to generate power for missions that need decades-long battery life. That would include probes heading beyond Jupiter or rovers exploring the frigid 2-week lunar night. The idea is that americium could become a compact, maintenance-free power source that can survive moon dust, temperature swings, and even a rocket explosion. Japan already has a working americium-powered LED demonstration, and JAEA says they are aiming for a space-ready prototype by 2029. That's it for T-Minus for May 6, 2025, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. For additional resources from today's report, check out our show notes at space.n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like T-Minus are part of the daily routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K senior producer is Alice Carruth. Our producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I'm your host, Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.
T-Minus.
And now, a word from our sponsor, Black Kite. If third-party risk is keeping you up at night, you're not alone. It's a constant battle. Black Kite's third-party cyber risk platform is built on real-world threat intelligence, straight from their research team's ongoing breach analysis, dark web monitoring, and attacker tactics. That means you get a hacker's eye view of your supply chain to proactively spot risks. And speaking of research, they just dropped their 2025 third-party breach report, breaking down last year's biggest trends and what's coming next. Grab the report now at www.blackkite.com.